Thanks for tuning in to the EthnoCO podcast, where our motto is helping people, help plants, help people. Please check out the links below and donate to our GoFundMe and Patreon to support the show.
We want to bring you a podcast that is inspiring, exciting, and scholarly, and share a bit of our curiosity about plants, people, anthropology, botany, shamanism, native cultures, environmentalism, and adventures in ethnobotany. Enjoy the show.
And this one is a bit of an exploration into what EthnoCO wants to do in the near future, where the direction that we want to take the company, what kind of expeditions we want to go on, things that have been undocumented or haven't been documented enough in science. We'd like to go into those far-flung places and go and find out more and explore options in how to improve this planet as well. So pretty interesting, pretty free-flowing kind of discussion. We've got a lot of ideas we've been talking about for about 10 years. And we're going to rattle a few off now, I reckon.
Yeah, future expeditions, future podcasts, or things that are kind of understudied that either need to be talked about, investigated. There's a lot of things that can be investigated, online via research papers or via old literature and stuff like that. But there's a number of things that really need to be explored directly in the field. So that's some of the stuff we're going to talk about. And Callum, if you want, I'll open up with Lake Papua New Guinea, which this is one of the most exciting ones. Papua, the island of Papua. Currently, the western Papua is called Irian Jaya, which has been taken over by Indonesia. It's raining outside. If you guys hear some pitter patter, hopefully you can hear me pretty well. But the western part of the island of Papua is owned by Indonesia since about 1963, 65. And the eastern part is known as Papua New Guinea. I prefer to just call the entire island Papua. I hope that's correct. I don't know. I would ask the people that live there. But anyway, it is a very mysterious place. Besides the Amazon, besides the Amazon, it has the highest concentration of isolated native people or native people living in voluntary isolation. So those are people that have extremely little contact or no contact with the outside world. There's reputed to still be cannibals in Papua New Guinea or Papua, the whole island. Actually, I think the western part is probably the more remote area. There is an excellent documentary, depending on, it may be a little controversial, but this guy, Bruce Perry, who I've always been a fan of, goes to Papua. It looks like it's like the late 90s or early 2000s. I'm not exactly sure when they filmed it, but it's called Cannibals and Crampons. And I'm pretty sure you can just find it on YouTube. So there's like the deleted scenes and there's the actual documentary. I encourage anybody with any interest in this to watch both of them. So yeah, extremely isolated people, reputed to be cannibals there. Oh, there's such a great book. What's the name of it? It's gosh, I'll remember it in a minute. I just read it. I lost it. It's about this really famous rich guy that gets eaten in Papua. I'm serious. It's gosh, I can't remember the name of it. I'll find it. I'll find it right now. But
and so Papua has an extremely high concentration of remote communities, but also really, really high concentration of cultural diversity and topographical diversity. That's, from what I know of it, is accounting for probably the isolation for a lot of communities, but a lot of different language groups, a lot of different ways of living, cultural practices, some very strange. I know they bury their dead in some areas and then they wait for them to start decomposing and then they dig the bones up and then have a ceremony and then rebury them somewhere else. And it's,
or sometimes, so the very, very isolated pockets in these different mountain valleys. It has the highest concentration of languages anywhere in the world. I think there's over 600 languages on the island of Papua. So they have an extreme diversity in their cultures and in their languages. The name of the book is Savage Harvest, A Tale of Cannibals, Colonialism and Michael Rockefeller's Tragic Quest. And it was an amazing anthropological piece. He seems to have proven, not 100%, but proven pretty well his thesis, his idea, his theory that Michael Rockefeller was actually killed, butchered, and eaten by people in Papua. But don't judge them too harshly before you read the book. There's a whole series of cultural, political, geopolitical things that happen as to why they do this, why they sort of need to take revenge on the outside world, the white world. So read the book, because that's another. So future podcast, Savage Harvest. Maybe we can have the author, whose name is Carl Hoffman. Maybe we can have Carl Hoffman on here, because what an amazing book. One of the best, honestly, one of the best books I've ever read. I'm really into this stuff, but really good. So the plants and the fungi to be investigated in Papua. There's these things called like the mushroom madness rites or mushroom madness rituals. Now, that's the name given by outsiders. So they are these various types of mushrooms. Some may contain psilocybin, and others may contain other psychoactive compounds that we're a little less familiar with. And the early parts, it's like a 12 or 13 part process in a specific native group in Papua. And the early parts of these rituals use psychoactive species of the Zingiberaceae, psychoactive gingers. So you eat large amounts of these gingers, and they have some sort of psychoactive effect. And the final rites use these mushrooms that are completely understudied. No white person has ever eaten them, as far as I'm aware. I don't even think we're sure what the actual species of them are. And, it's pretty likely. I got this information from a reference that probably came from like the 1910s, the 1920s, or maybe up to the 50s. But it's very possible that this practice is completely extinct. So, but there may be people who remember it. But if we let it just slip in the past, we'll lose it forever. So that's one expedition and podcast that I would like to do. Also, this is going to be like a shameless self-promotion of EthnoCO. Like, this is what we want to do, and we'd like you guys to listen, and we could use your help donating to GoFundMe and Patreon so that we can like go do these things for real. But yeah, anyway, I'll let you talk for a minute, Cal. I'm sorry.
Do you know what the purpose for these rituals was?
I believe it was
a genetic ritual, or is it for healing?
I believe it was to initiate the young men, the young boys, to become adult men.
Yeah,
if I remember correctly.
Right. So it was you could speculate that it was somewhat similar to a Vision Quest, ayahuasca ceremony, or any of those.
It certainly sounds that way.
Powerful psychoactives.
It certainly sounds that way. While I'm looking in this book, Callum, you got anything to add?
Well, we could fling ourselves across the planet to Siberia at some stage too, and
absolutely,
yeah, we could check in with the true shamans, however they originally pronounced their own name. Which is from a Siberian language, shaman up there, for a medicine man or woman, practitioner of divination. And the shamans in Siberia are famous for delving into Amanita muscaria, the red and white spotty mushroom, fly agaric. And also they're the reindeer herders that tend to the herds that actually eat those mushrooms themselves. So there's a strong cultural focus and use of these mushrooms, and it's pretty well documented. But we would love to get in there and head up northeast Russia and check in on these communities that are still practicing their reindeer herding. They basically use reindeer for everything in their lives, from leather, meat, milk. Then they sell them to make a little bit of money. They're always moving on sleighs and carts, moving around the forest and the pastures. out in the wilds, and the shamans use this mushroom for shamanic practice. And there's some just strange things there, which we've touched on with psychoactive. I'm not sure which episode it was. It was in a couple of episodes, but basically the shamans up that way tend to drink the urine of the reindeer that has consumed substantial amounts of this mushroom, this psychoactive mushroom. The mushroom gets processed through the kidneys of the reindeer. The shaman collects the urine of the reindeer and consumes it for their own sacred purpose.
Yeah. We had touched on that. I'm glad you were talking because I can't find anything yet. But what I find kind of strange now with the recent stuff that's going on with Russia and Ukraine, you can't like really easily go to Russia without maybe getting arrested by the Russian authorities or something. But previous to this situation, it would have been fairly easy and fairly cheap, I mean, relatively speaking, as expeditions go, for me or Callum or whoever to go to northeastern Russia and Siberia and visit some of these Amanita muscaria eating people. And it just kind of blows my mind. Like, why has nobody done that? The word shaman comes from this culture, and there's such an interest in shamanism. And nobody's just like gone there. I mean, it's not that hard. I mean, you don't want to go in the winter. That would be a bad idea. But if you went in the summer, it shouldn't be that incredibly difficult as far as these sort of things go. So that's definitely something when this stuff dies down, when Russia stops attacking Ukraine. I don't want to make it sound like it's Anyway, yeah, I'm not a fan of the Russians' attack on Ukraine. We might have our friend Ostap on here one day to talk about that. But should be a fairly easy expedition to do and go and eat some Amanita muscaria and drink some reindeer piss with these people. So.
That's it. That's what we're down for. Let's raise money so we can go and drink reindeer piss.
hit that like button and I'll drink reindeer pee. Yeah.
Exactly. And then at some stage, I'd like to invite everyone over to my way out in this floating great southern land, Australia. I want to go and chew pituri with the First Nations people of Central Australia, Aboriginal people in various locations. Pituri is an interesting plant. It's a chewable plant that has a couple of psychoactives in it. And it's been long used as an aid for walkabout or for long hunts, long treks, looking for water. I guess it's an aid for their labor or working life, as many of these psychoactives we've talked about are in their own cultural context. But the thing is you need to find the right location, the right time of year. You need knowledge into how to harvest it, which one to harvest, when. Because you can kind of get it wrong, I'm pretty sure. The chemicals within the plants can be tipped out of balance depending on what time of year and what location. So that's an expedition of exploration, of learning about these things, but also trying them out. And apparently it's still widely used in areas.
And if you get the wrong one, apparently it just kind of makes you sick rather than having a positive psychoactive effect. I believe it's Duboisia hopewoodii, I believe is the botanical name.
Duboisia hopewoodii.
I found it.
A range of names from pituri, pichari, and a number of other names, depending on what language you're in. But it apparently contains scopolamine and nicotine.
Yep, or compounds closely related to nicotine.
Yeah, yep. And that's where you've got to be careful. I'd refrain from, buying this online, even though it's completely legal. Yeah. Buying it online, you might get one that's from just an incorrect location, the wrong time of year. Someone's identified it. Cool, they've harvested it and sold it. Could put you in a pretty rough state of delirium or nausea. It's probably best to go and meet the people who know the most about it, and their culture while you're there by exploring, being interested in what they're doing, and keeping that alive.
I've heard that they're often extremely secretive of their preparation and their their cultural knowledge surrounding this. So that's probably something that would have to be a long-term project of one particular anthropologist or amateur enthusiast that wanted to go and do that. It's been known about for quite a long time. When we do tobacco, even though we don't want to say that pituri is tobacco, it's not. It's a different plant. But it kind of fits into that sphere a little bit. We'll probably do a full 15 or 20 minutes talking about it. I did find the reference real quick. I'll just read. This is about Papua New Guinea. This is from our good friend Snoo, Garden of Eden, who we just wouldn't even have a podcast if we didn't have this book. It is well worth mentioning that the common spice ginger, Zingiber officinale in the Zingiberaceae, is known to produce psychotropic effects when consumed in large amounts. Leaves and rhizomes of ginger are chewed by the Nikopo of Papua New Guinea as a dance stimulant. The Bimin, having trouble saying these native groups' names, use a special ritual strains of different ginger types in the first stages of their 12-stage initiation procedures. So they apparently have specific types of ginger that we would assume have specific types of compounds, of chemicals in them that produce slightly different effects, or perhaps it's so ingrained in the culture how important they are that maybe they're just regular old ginger. But that's something that needs to be explored. And then
would that suggest that ginger is endemic or indigenous to Papua New Guinea and maybe Greater Asia? Where is ginger from if there's such a great diversity in that area?
I would certainly think so. I don't know, but I would certainly, that would be my guess, that it's from Southeast Asia or Papua. Yeah.
It's classic. Like, we get one variety of ginger in the West in the supermarkets, and that's what we know as ginger. And it's a great, amazing medicinal and flavor additive and all the rest.
Yeah.
But we don't realize there's like probably hundreds of varieties of these things that we know one of. And that's a discussion for something I'm very interested in. So Scott is delving into food diversity and food conservation as well, because there's so much to discover out there about the incredible diversity of these things that have many, many different uses. And at the same time, we're losing a lot of it every single year. So it's a bit of a win-win of discovery and conservation at the same time.
And once you lose the cultural knowledge, the guy, that the old man, or the old woman, or whatever, the group, the tribe that knows this stuff, like once you lose them, it's just some plant. Like that's in the, like you'll see it, it'll be there, but you'll have no idea of all the secrets that it holds that they learned over, I think in Papua they've been said to be there for like 60 or 80,000 years or more. So once you lose those people, once that slips away, so that's why this future expedition thing is so important. This is something that large corporations used to do back before the 1950s. And then it shifted, in the late 50s, early 60s to exploring chemically the synthetic derivatives or the slightly modified compounds. And these pharmaceutical companies, corporations, whatever, they no longer send out these great ethnobotanical explorers to search the far corners of the earth and find these amazing plants and cultural knowledge. That was sort of given up on. And that's why when you read books like The Garden of Eden, you don't find many references, or you find the most references from, the 1860s up until about the 1960s, and then it sort of drops off a bit. There is some universities and colleges that would study it, but mostly you find old references, and we need to go and confirm these things. So that's why future expeditions are extremely important.
Yeah, I think they used to call it biological prospecting.
Yep.
You go into the Amazon and go and search out for something that you can extract wealth from in some medicinal way or narcotic way.
Or economic botany, and doing it in a really negative way would be biopiracy.
Yeah.
Something to be avoided, certainly.
Yep.
let me hit on this real quick, and then we'll go to the next thing. There are so many botanical names in here in the Papua section. It's so diverse, and it's so such a little known area of the world. But I'll read this. Going back to our friends, the Bimini, which is in Papua, we find that their extended initiation rituals are a very complex process, involving ingestion of many different combinations of different substances, an abundance of taboos and special procedures regarding the use of major herbs which the rituals revolve around. That is ginger, a Nicotiana species, and mushrooms. Those mushrooms include a Boletus and a psilocybe species, which are in the stages 10 to 12. They're not compulsory, these the final stages, but they're required to be a fully initiated elder. They are conducted at dawn, dusk, and night, respectively, and gradually increase the intensity of the experience at each stage. So that's just a little taste of the stuff that can be found on the island of Papua.
It's such an incredible place, given the land and the ocean and the climate and the location on the planet has formed these cultures and these languages and these food groups and this food diversity and these therefore medicinal uses, and the remoteness has kept it relatively unknown to science. Or maybe we've documented it 50 years ago and then nothing, as Scott said, nothing's been done since then, and it's overdue for checking in on whether this is still a practice. Is it extinct yet? Is it on the edge of extinction? Can we do something to prevent that? Can it be beneficial to people in Guinea and beyond?
Yeah. Did I mention about the last glaciers of the tropics? I don't think I did. I'm having a hard time confirming this. There may still be glaciers on the island of Papua. So an amazing expedition, I think, would be to go investigate the plants we just talked about and to hike from lowland rainforest up into the mountains, into cloud forest, climb over glaciers, reach the peak of a mountain, and go down and come out the other side of the island. Glaciers in the tropics. I mean, that's a very, very rare thing. I think it happens in Africa and in South America. But I mean, glaciers in the tropics, and they'll be gone. If they're not gone already, they'll be gone in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. I don't know. But something that needs to be seen and documented before they disappear. Also, if you're a mountain climber, I would say the island of Papua has the most unclimbed peaks in the entire world. There's a lot of peaks in Papua that have not been climbed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just a lot of social or community development work, a lot of scientific work needs to be put into these areas too, because as Scott said, if you're going to lose an ice cap on top of the mountain that's feeding all of your streams and all of your agriculture and all of your rainforest, just like in South America, the ice has a very, very prominent place in the culture and sacred culture. When that goes, we don't really know what's going to happen to the communities there. And that's why there may be some need for further involvement in getting together with people from different countries or within their own country and finding solutions to some of the challenges that we're going to face in the coming decades. And the exploration of this and the scientific documentation may just be that initial step to get in there to find out how things are going, how things have changed, where they're going as well, and how we can play the best part in improving the place.
I think in general, people would be really interested in these things, especially presented in the correct way. People just need enough funding and drive to go in and do these things, and that's what I'd really like to be able to do. What's our next topic, Mr. Callan?
Well, before we move on from that,
sure.
I guess moving out from Papua New Guinea and South America and such amazing crop diversity, medicinal diversity, strange practices, cultural diversities, all within these areas. I'd love to do an ongoing expedition whenever we can to continue to document these varieties of botanicals.
Yeah.
Collections, make preservations, and make redistributions to other communities in the area, and integrate a lot of different disciplines as well, because I think it's something that we need to have. We need to have entrepreneurs on board that can find ways to bring money into these communities to pay for these crop varieties that are going extinct. Or we might need people to go and study them and understand them better as to how they can be conserved in some way or distributed. Because frankly, in parts of South America, in Peru, there's incredible crop diversity, but we're losing it every year because the farmers will generally just tend to grow and sell what makes them enough money to live. And if something's not making them any money anymore, well, then they just tip it off. And that crop, or those 10 crops that they've had for thousands of years potentially, just gets ignored until it's ignored into extinction.
Yeah.
And it's fair enough why they're doing that in some areas. They need money, just like everyone. It might be about how do we better incentivize them to be crop conservationists for the betterment of all people who may really start relying on that diversity in the future. And that's what originally took me into the Amazon to explore cacao as well, because I heard that there was varieties of cacao that were disease resistant. And this is coming out of some major losses in cacao throughout South America in the last 10, 20 years. And Peru has so much diversity of cacao that they're really getting on top of that, like growing for diversity and making decent money off selling it organically as well. They've really organized themselves in a beautiful way. And that was really inspiring to see that like crop diversity can be integrated into a bit of a business plan and an economic plan too.
Yeah.
But it got me thinking, there's so many other varieties in Peru alone of weird fruits that come from the Amazon, that have come out of the Amazon to the rest of the world that we might know. And there's so many more there to discover and make some good out of it too. So just for the excitement of learning about it and tasting it and meeting the native folks who are custodians of these things, but also who knows where we can take it in the next 10, 20 years with protecting those cultures and those food sources as well.
From what I remember, I don't know, 10, 20, however many years ago, it was thought that cacao was from Mexico. Well, maybe it was 20 or 30 years ago, but they started doing genetic tests, and they actually found that cacao is most likely from the southwestern Amazon, which is Peru, which I find to be amazing. There's some specific varieties. Is it chuncho? Chuncho.
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 Yeah. Chuncho just meaning, wild. Probably from a Quechua word as well.
I believe so. Yeah.
But it's incredible because the further you go into the Amazon, the more you meet native folks there, and they tell you about, we've got chunchos growing. They're 10 meters tall. Like they just grow in the forest all over our land. It's like either someone's brought them all the way down from Mexico a long, long time ago, which they could have, and then planted it out throughout a huge part of the Amazon. And then somehow they've manipulated the diversity very, very quick into all these varieties, probably 100 varieties of cacao or more that I've heard of. I don't know, because they're always playing with them, or they were from there originally.
Yeah, it seems to be the other way around from what the genetic test can tell us. That leads me into very, very briefly. This is a really wild idea, and I'll speak about it very briefly. And it's not something I would do without cooperation between indigenous people in two very special parts of the world, and that's Southeast Asia and the Amazon rainforest. So you've got, and there would have to be a lot of interaction with three groups of people: indigenous people in Southeast Asia, the Amazon, and the scientific community, because you'd have to make sure you're not transmitting any diseases or invasive species. You'd have to do pilot programs, little test farms, but to help trade and exchange, especially the fruit diversity between Southeast Asia and the Amazon. So you would move aguaje from the Amazon to Southeast Asia, and you would move lychee from Southeast Asia to the Amazon. you would move durian from Southeast Asia to the Amazon. My mind is slipping me. You'd move masasamba, a Anaceae species, from the Amazon to Southeast Asia. But this exchange, because they'll seemingly grow so well in both areas because they're so similar, this could give the Amazonian farmer or the Southeast Asian farmer just more economic diversity and more options. It could give him time when he has more crops fruiting. For example, if he doesn't have anything that fruits in October, November, well, there may be a plant in the Amazon that can fill that niche.
Yep.
And, this might sound a little wild. Oh, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't play with nature like that. Well, we did. Humans did. I mean, there's tons of crops in Peru. There's wheat and barley in Peru. There's all sorts of stuff in Peru that is not native to there. We really only stopped doing that in about the 1940s or 50s, 60s maybe. So anyway, that's an idea I had for a cultural, economic, and botanical exchange between the two great jungles on Earth.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. And working with that, spreading the diversity, but in a way, not keeping all your eggs in one basket, like having all this amazing diversity in one small location, spreading it out. So if something happens to one of the populations, you have a safeguard population as well. Exactly. So it's generally working with a pretty good principle, as long as it's done in the right way. There could be real benefits there for the community, because we don't really know how the world's going to change in the coming near future. So as long as it's done in the right way as well, because I mean, what happened with the folks that took rubber seeds out of the Amazon and took them to Malaysia, I think it was.
Yep.
Much led to the collapse of the rubber boom in the Amazon, for better or worse.
But for the Amazonian native people, that's a whole podcast we need to do.
Yeah.
We need like Wade Davis or Glenn Shepard, or too bad Richard Evan Schulte is no longer with us. But oh gosh, that's a whole. Yeah. But the collapse of the rubber boom was an excellent thing for the indigenous people in the Amazon. I mean, that was like such a great thing. The rubber boom was the Amazonian Holocaust. I mean, a terrible, terrible time for Amazonian people. But it was it was a bad economic thing for, Brazil and other South American countries, the rich colonialist governments and people there. So, that's another great podcast.
Definitely touch on that one shortly. That's and we will touch on I think seed conservation and seed diversity, food security, all of that, and how it ties into ethnobotany is a whole episode that's quite lengthy too, because there's so much moving of varieties and cultivars, fruits, seeds, nuts, vegetables through history too that we could touch on. Absolutely. It's like maize and corn being spread through the Americas, tobacco. That's the Columbian exchange of how Christopher Columbus encountered some foods for the first time and spread them to Europe, and then how that impacted the Irish potato famine, and how the rest of the world got bananas, and then how crops of bananas failed because of the low diversity. Like it's such an amazing story.
It is. I had a friend of mine watched a couple of the podcasts. It takes us quite a while to research these. We've found, and we're doing the best we can, and as quick as we can. But a friend of mine asked me after watching a couple episodes, he was like, wow, that was really good. He's like, how many of these do you think you could do? He's like, 5 or 10 more. And I was like, dude, we could do this forever. Like me and Callum I think we could just keep going as long as we dive into the books and we research ourselves. There's just such a diversity of topics. I mean, and that's one reason we wanted to make this a podcast. And that's one reason we want to do this episode, talking about actual future field expeditions and research. And then we want to bring it back to you and talk about it. My ultimate goal would be to bring you not only distill information that other people have written about, but to bring you some new information. As an amateur, me and Callum I'm an amateur ethnobotanist. Callum is a professional. You work on
an ecologist or a ecological practitioner.
Yeah.
And I've learned most of my ethnobotanical knowledge off Scott and the people we've bounced into on our journeys in South America. And just through curiosity, right? We're here to learn every day as much as we can for the rest of our lives, hopefully. And that's an amazing way to live. So we're just going to put all that into the podcast with 1,001 new episodes
coming out next season, 1,001. Yeah. What should
potentially thinking about, it's kind of touching on more like the economic development or community development side of things. We are conscious of how do we manage tourism in the healthiest way for the planet and for people. And I mean, that's a sustainable business plan in itself, but we have to be thinking more about revolutionizing the way we've kind of gone from colonization and the bad impacts of tourism to say, how can we do things better? We should always be thinking that way progressively. And there's a lot of interest in Australia for people that want to do wild Amazonian fishing charters, effectively. They want to go out and catch some of the strange fish that they see on River Monsters, the TV show. And so I've talked with a couple of folks in the Amazon about whether this would be of interest to them. Would they like to guide someone along to do a fishing trip for a few days to learn about the species living in these rivers and freshwater systems there? And so that could be just another way of people getting into the deeper parts of the Amazon to explore the wildlife there, but doing it in a way that doesn't impact on the populations of the species and these food sources for the people. So it could be a catch and release program managed and run by the native communities that are custodians of that area, of those waterways.
Yeah.
And foreigners get the chance to learn more about wildlife with more of an intimate, hands-on approach.
Yeah, and I think as long as you did it with the consent of the community, of course, and you did it in the proper way, you did it in a way that, for example, all the fish you catch goes to the community, and they're fishing these areas anyway. I don't think me and Callum's not talking about like harvesting these and taking them somewhere else, but as a cultural experience, as a fishing or even a hunting experience of their local area. And if you were to have, a certain amount of money, thousands of dollars, whatever, going into this area, that makes it economically viable for these people, because native people aren't they're not naive. They don't just like live in the woods and think there's some of them do. Isolated people, I don't mean to call them naive, but they don't know what else is going on in the outside world. But most native people on Earth know that like other people have cars and TVs and roads and all that stuff, and a lot of them want that. So if there's a way to incentivize them to make money through practicing their culture rather than, let's say, cutting down trees, then we should certainly do that. And if you're paying them to go hunting with them or share their culture, doing plant medicine ceremonies, whatever, I think that's a way, way better thing than sort of incentivizing them to cut down their trees or to move out of their native lands and just become like regular people, So I think it's a great idea, as long as it was done in the proper way with the consent of the people, and they're the masters of their domain, and I think we need to listen to them with what they want and what they want to do for the future, and any way we can support the pride and preservation in their culture, I think that's a really great thing, and hunting and fishing could be a way to do that.
Yep. And if anyone listening is interested in jumping on board for any of the tours or any of these expeditions, or share any ideas, then we're all ears. It's a conversation. And I think EthnoCO is such a cool organization to provide for a diversity of different ideas and interests that people have. If you're a writer, you want to go and document something and learn more about it, you can do it. We'll put something together. If you want to go on a wild adventure into some of the most remote parts of the planet, we'll figure out a way to do it. Absolutely. If you have a big group, you have a small group, like, it's a discussion, and we're solutions oriented, and and we're collaborating with hopefully the right people on the other side of that, which are the native communities or the local people along the way.
Yep, 100%. Yeah, if you're if you want to write a paper, and you're an amateur anthropologist or whatever, like I am, we can take you to meet some native people. And if you're a small group that like just wants to visit the Amazon, you don't want to do anything too crazy, like we can do that too. We can go take you and see some birds and some animals and visit kind of the edges of native communities. Or if you want to go on, an extreme expedition, like where we need permits issued by the government to go deep inside, national reserves, that's something we can do too. It all just, it depends on the conversation and the amount of planning that we need to do for something like that. So yeah, please, everybody, please reach out to us, because I do this stuff because I enjoy it. I do this stuff because that's what I want to do. So, please reach out. And like Callum said, let's have a conversation. Speaking of which, Mr. Callum, if I may, another podcast and expedition that I'd like to do is I've written an article on Medium. If you haven't checked out EthnoCO's Medium page, please check out our Medium page, just medium.com. You can put in medium.com, EthnoCO, and it'll come up. I've visited a number of petroglyphs in the Amazon. That was something I was really, really interested in, these pictorial drawings and rocks, petroglyphs. One of the most famous being Puxaro, and I have an article on Medium about that, so check that out. And I was sort of trying to link, like some kind of Indiana Jones type stuff. Some say Puxaro is a map to the lost city of gold. Other people say it is it's the visions and hallucinations of the shamans, and it has some esoteric knowledge. But I was trying to link.
Be clear, it's a large petroglyph site. It's a long rock wall in a very remote part of the Amazon. How large is this petroglyph site?
I think it's like 3 or 4 meters tall. What is that, like 12 or 15 feet tall, and probably like 60 foot long. So that would be
20 meters long.
20 meters long. Yeah.
Huge.
It is an amazing set of petroglyphs. It's one of the coolest things I've ever. I went there one time in 2014. It is absolutely amazing. And I photographed it, and I was trying to link some of the symbology. You can find symbols that are in the Inca culture in the mountains that are kind of similar, but it seems very ancient. Nobody's exactly sure. I need to go document more petroglyph sites. So that's an expedition I would like to do. I would like to go photograph and find out more about different petroglyph sites. But yeah, check out the article, and if anybody wants to go to Puxaro or go see various petroglyphs, that's something we should definitely do. I also have a book somewhere.
I got this one here. Have you seen this one,
That's
Scott?
it? Yeah. Did I give that to you?
No, I bought this, but you probably told me about it.
Okay.
Discovering Ruins and Rock Art in Brazil and Peru by G. Cope Shellhorn.
That one's excellent.
But yeah, he and his teams he's an English professor who's traveled vastly through the Amazon and found a lot of different undocumented petroglyph sites. Some they had to totally uncover from the growth and the vegetation, moss everywhere.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's up to someone to decipher what these mean and how to conserve them and give them back to the native community as well for their history.
Hold your book up real quick again.
Yeah.
Yeah, great book. Really, really good book.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's like a very comprehensive Indiana Jones style, throwing himself into hardcore parts of the Amazon for discovery as a foreigner too, with the help of native guides. It's really hard to do. Like the Amazon's really tough terrain to be in for a long time. Move through uncharted terrain, so no roads and trails. You're cutting trail the whole time. It's hard to camp in it. Everything's trying to eat you.
Yeah.
It's hard to get drinking water that doesn't make you sick. It's
Yeah.
adventure.
Yeah, me and Callum could do a whole podcast about some of our expeditions. Callum got very, very sick one time, and so have I.
Yeah. But that is definitely a story for another time, because there's so much wonder, mystery, just awe-inspiring experiences to be had from the largest rainforest on the planet. It's like running on a boat. I think coming out of the Amazon one year, I just had this epiphany of like, I'm basically living inside a David Attenborough documentary right now. It was this weird nostalgic connection with all the documentaries you've seen throughout your childhood, and you are surrounded by the highest diversity on the planet, pretty much.
It's the I love Peru, I love the Andes, I love the Quechuas, but when I went to the Amazon, all I wanted to do was spend more time there. I just wanted to get back, and that's actually what kind of prompted me to start EthnoCO. It's just, I need more people to join me and to see this. I need the funds myself to go see these places. It is the Amazon rainforest. It's the most amazing thing I have ever experienced in my life, and I mean it's truly, truly magnificent. Yeah, what else we got, Cal?
plenty more expedition options, but I think a lot of them would require a whole other episode on it. I think there is one we could touch on, which is Peruvian, and it is El Coño.
Yeah.
So that's an easy one. That is a very remote volcano-shaped, pyramidal-shaped mountain in the Amazon, in this vast green area, in very flat terrain too, and there's this very, very steep 45-degree slope kind of pyramid. Out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
Totally covered in forest all the way to the top as well. And no one really knows anything about it. So there are native communities in the area. There's a river nearby, but to get to this mountain that is like a pillar in the middle of the Amazon, surely over the thousands of years of history has had some major significance for the native communities, culture, and history there. If you can get up one of the nearest rivers, it's still a week's hike to get to the base of it.
Yeah.
On trails that may or may not even exist.
Which me and Callum estimated using Google Earth, because no one has ever been there besides native people. That's something I've wanted to do for a long time. It's in Sierra del Divisor, like the mountain of the divide, which is on the border of Brazil and Peru and Brazil. And they've flown planes around it. Google like the cone in the Amazon, or the cone Peru, or the Cono, C-O-N-O, Sierra del Divisor. And you'll see pictures of it. It's amazing. It's apparently completely independent from the Andes. It's I believe it's volcanic. I mean, they don't even know that but they assume. But it just shoots. It's a flat plain in the Amazon, and this thing just shoots up out of the ground. And one of my lifelong goals is to stand on top of that thing and look out across, the expanse of the flat Amazon in front of me. And I'm sure the natives had probably climbed it. I don't know that for sure. I would assume they have, just because they know the area well. But the people in that area would be isolated natives that have no contact, or extremely little contact with the outside world. No one has ever recorded going up it and talked about it to the outside world. So for all intents and purposes, as far as exploration goes, no one has ever gone up and taken pictures or anything like that. So the cone.
And that would be such a significant expedition with such potential that ideally we would have quite a crew involved. You're thinking botanists, archaeologists, linguists, historians, potentially,
geologists,
people, a lot of Peruvian people. We need as many contexts as possible, because what you would find there, maybe my eyes wouldn't even be able to understand or read it, but someone next to us would be able to decipher that there's actually 10 new species that aren't from the local lowland jungle on this mountain here. Or native folks that can decipher, they know what to look for signs of the old people and what they were doing up there, or whether there's tombs up there, or there's lookouts, there's shamanic ritual locations. It's and because it's so prominent, there is a real chance that it was used sometime in the last multiple thousands of years. And in very recent years, apparently the Sistine Chapel of the Ancients was discovered in Colombia, which is 8 miles of petroglyph, or not petroglyph, it's stone paintings, I think.
Yeah.
Maybe petroglyphs as well, but it's dating up to 12,000 years ago in Colombia, and this is stretches of walls that have been painted, drawn on, maybe carved as well, with animal depictions, human depictions in red and black, brown. And they're even showing animals that don't really exist in the Amazon anymore. So and it's eroded so much, they might have started painting it at the top, and then the soils moved down and they just kept painting as time went on. We don't know. Maybe they climbed it on towers. It's ridiculous. And so any of that, such a long history in these areas that anything could be possible.
Absolutely, man. What amazing stuff. Should I go rapid fire with the rest of the stuff I have?
Yeah.
Because we're getting into hour and 10 minutes now. I'm gonna come back. I'll come back to one after I do this stuff. But Tim Plowman, this guy Tim Plowman, who you would have read about in One River if you've read One River. He basically pulled apart the coca genus. I believe it's dedicated to Tim Plowman. If you look in the beginning of it, correct me if I'm wrong. Tim Plowman, he kind of teased apart the Brugmansia species as well as the coca species, and that's something that he did a great job documenting it. But it's something that could be sort of explored, and somebody could try this type of coca and this type of coca and see if the different types of Brugmansia are still well known about. The obscure mushrooms I touched on a little bit with the Papua New Guinea thing, the mushroom madness rituals. However, there's mushrooms, psychoactive mushrooms, that don't contain psilocybin nor muscimol or ibotenic acid. They're different. They contain kava-lactones. There's a gynophilus species that contains kava-lactones, which is what's in kava. That is a psychoactive mushroom. And there's even more obscure ones that contain completely novel chemicals that are not psilocybin or anything that we typically associate with psychoactive mushrooms. I would like, another one.
Lactones are presumably similar to, if anyone's had kava, I know I haven't. It's a root quite often used in Polynesia, so throughout South Pacific. I think they crush it up and strain it. You drink the juice.
Yep.
And causes a slight numbing effect, so it's mildly psychoactive. It's a relaxant, muscle relaxant, and numbing effect. You feel tingling on the lips. And it's given as a ceremonial drink in Polynesia. So somehow kava-lactones are within this mushroom that could, who knows? So we could only speculate as to the effects and the cultural uses of that.
Yeah. Varroa species. Varroa, I'm going to butcher this name, but it's the nutmeg family, the Myristicaceae. Myristicaceae. That is the nutmeg family. The Varroa, they would peel this bark. This is something well recorded by Richard Evans Schultes. If you look up his old book, the name is slipping my mind, but if you look on Arrowhead, Richard Evans Schultes, I want to say it's Food of the Gods, but I don't think that's right. If you look up his book, you will see depictions, drawings of these natives who strip this bark off, and they're heating this bark over a fire, and this red sap comes dripping out. and they make a snuff out of it. Something you blow up your nose that contains DMT and 5-MeO DMT and stuff like that. That has, I don't think I've ever read a report of a, Westerner, white person, whatever, using it in its native habitat. There's people that bought it online, but apparently the sap degrades over time. So when you buy it online, like, are you really getting the real deal? Is it fresh, et cetera, et cetera? So that's the thing, the Varola. The miracle fruits of equatorial Africa. A lot of people have heard of one of the miracle fruits. I cannot pronounce its name very well, but it basically makes your taste buds register sour flavors as sweet flavors. But there's not just one miracle fruit. There's 3 or 4 or more. And those are very obscure. What else? The lost peyotes. This is one of the most interesting. And yes, I did coin this term. I did. I know I did. If you're familiar, I'll give a little secret about me. I used to be on the psychoactive entheogenic forums long ago. And if you're familiar with the terms lost peyote, you know who I am. I have returned after all these years. I was quite a dumb young kid when I was on the forums. But so please forgive me. Not really something I should be proud of. But the lost peyotes are things that the Huichol, Tarahumara, and other native groups in Mexico, southern United States and northern Mexico, said that these are psychoactive. For example, Ariocarpus species, Turbinicarpus, Mammarillia species, which are not Lophophorus species. They're not traditional peyote, but they're reputed to be psychoactive like peyote. Anyway, that's something that needs to be explored. And I'm almost done. I would like to go. Wade Davis mentioned there was 3 cities in South America that were sort of along like the hippie trail, where hippies would congregate. And I remember 2 of them. I can't remember the third. The third was maybe Cali, Colombia. But I remember Cusco was one, and Santa Marta, Colombia, on the Caribbean coast of northern Colombia, was another. Yep. So I would like to start in Santa Marta, and I would like to take a motorcycle or buses or something and go all the way down to Cusco, exploring plants all along the way. And yeah, I got one more, but I'll shut up for a second and let Mr. Callum talk.
Nah, stay tuned for more. I think that's enough for now.
Lots of stuff. I got one more.
Yep.
Me and Callum have an upcoming. The first episode of season 2 is going to be about Huachuma, San Pedro, Trichocereus species, and the Colomer mescaline-containing cactus of the Andes. And I am going to attempt soon to go to Huancabamba, which is sort of the current modern epicenter of San Pedro usage in the world in South America, and visit the sacred lagoons and visit the shamans and stuff like that. And I'll try to report back to you. So season 2 is coming up, and Huachuma will be the first episode if everything goes as planned. But yeah, my list is exhausted. That's all I got for now.
Yeah. So that's why we plug our Patreon when it's up for this season. A bit of a crowdfunder as well, just to help go towards helping Scott and I set up for the podcast itself. So we're going to get some microphones, and we are going to make this available for as many people as possible on video and audio. Hopefully have a forum ongoing with anyone who wants to talk, email, message at any time. We want to create a bit of a community around that, whether that's for EthnoCO's tours or it's just for conversation and spreading ideas and making discussions, comments, reviews. The additional crowdfunding can go towards these expeditions, and people can be involved in that too.
Yep.
So if we can raise enough of these resources to be able to go to undertake any of these, then that's going to be planned for the future, the near future, as we've done for the last number of years. We've always had expeditions in mind, places we want to go, and something that we think is important enough to do. So stay tuned for that. Get involved. Donate if you can. Share your ideas if you want to.
Yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in to the EthnoCO podcast. So at some point, we would not only like to do podcasts, but we want to film the expeditions as well. I'm not very good at editing or videography, but that's something I want to work on because I'm really dedicated to this, as Callum is. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. We look forward to seeing you next season, which will air in September, October, the first episode. So yeah, keep up with us. Check out our Patreon, donate to our Patreon, GoFundMe, and you can visit the website, www.ethnoco.com, which is ETHNOCO.com. And our motto is helping people, help plants, help people. So we will see y'all next season. Thanks.
See you guys.
Thanks for tuning in to the EthnoCO podcast, where our motto is helping people, help plants, help people. Please check out the links below and donate to our GoFundMe and Patreon to support the show.
We want to bring you a podcast that is inspiring, exciting, and scholarly, and share a bit of our curiosity about plants, people, anthropology, botany, shamanism, native cultures, environmentalism, and adventures in ethnobotany. Enjoy the show.